So I am Michele Hornish. I am the state project director and co-founder of ItStartsToday, Missouri, which is actually a crowdfunding platform. We are kickstarting the campaigns of every single Democratic nominee for Missouri state legislature, and we're doing that actually through a pretty innovative solution, frankly. It's a low-cost subscription model so that individuals can help fund those nominees every single month, ensuring that there's a guaranteed source of funding for nominees right after they get through the primary. Okay, so now that we have our full panel here, I would like to introduce everyone. First we have Jesse. Jesse Thomas is the CEO of CrowdPAC, which has a mission of helping emerging leaders reach their first dollar as quickly as possible, which is fantastic.
Nicely said.
Thank you. We also have Linda. Linda is, I'm sorry,
I'm the founder and special projects director of CAPAction.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Action Committee.
And we also have Carol Dawley, who is, are you the CEO of Invest to Elect, the founder?
I'm co-founder on the steering committee of Invest to Elect.
Wonderful. And could you tell us what Invest to Elect does?
Yeah, so Invest to Elect is actually not a new idea. There are currently 15 in the country. There were only 4 about 3 years ago. A number of us who were at the Women's March in Washington met the director of the Denver group, and we were all, of course, like everybody else in this room, you know, after we got up from our fetal positions, what do we do? And so we were kind of looking for something to do, and we thought, well, we know a lot of women, we know how to raise money for different things, and so let's try to raise money. So we started with 5 of us, and we had our first event last June. We decided to focus on federal races, primarily Senate, because we decided that senators are the emergency brakes, and wanted to focus on stopping Trump from some dangerous appointments in both the cabinet and the Senate, and it was easier to do research on the senators running. So we started out with 5 of us, and we had our first event last year in June for Tammy Baldwin, and fast forward to where we are now, and we have 140 members. And we have raised $630,000 for 11 senators. For 11 senators, 9 of whom were women, 8 of whom were incumbents, 1 open seat. Our first success, Doug Jones, we're going to take some credit for that. And then the 2 challengers for Arizona and Nevada. And what we do is we have candidates, invite candidates to come in to events. So it's a smaller event. It offers women a different kind of engagement to meet with their senators. I would say probably 95% of our membership is, they're new donors. They're new large donors. And what we decided to do is to have a minimum, we wanted to get out of the ticket selling business. And so we decided to ask people to make a commitment for a year, $3,000. And then we do vetting of candidates, we do research, we've met several of them before we decided to support them. And then our membership votes, we have a very thorough voting process, and then members get to pick and choose. So there's a floor of what you need to spend, but the checks are written directly to the candidate, not to us. We're not a PAC, we're all volunteer run, and there's not a ceiling. You can come to as many as you want. So it's been an incredible community, I think, that we've built. We've had opportunities to engage with these senators at a very granular kind of level. And I think what that's created with our members is a real sense of engagement. And there has been another project called the Cardinal Project that has come out of one of our members, created a similar model, lower dollar, for Illinois races, just women, up through Congress. So we've had a lot of fun. It's been very, very exciting, and I think the thing is it was catching a big moment, you know, where people wanted to do something. And if you don't run yourself, if you don't raise money for somebody who runs, or if you don't get out the vote, what do? You just kind of stew. So it's been as I say to my husband all the time, it's preserved. When he said, well, you know what, why are you spending so much time doing this? It's preserving my sanity. It's much better I'm doing what I'm doing. So that kind of in a nutshell is what we do and where we're at.
And that's wonderful. I mean, it's a great way, I think, to bring new people into the political sphere and introduce people into a way that they can help move the ball forward. And Linda, could you tell us a little bit, we were talking, over in the corner a little bit about how Linda actually founded her organization. I think it's a fantastic story that speaks a lot to how a lot of us, particularly in this room, have handled what I think Genevieve mentioned yesterday was a seismic event, right? We all handle this seismic event by bringing about seismic change, and that's why I think a lot of us are here. And Linda actually, her origin story of the organization, I think speaks to that as well.
Well, I feel like the dinosaur on the panel.
Oh, no.
I've been doing this. We've been doing this for 38 years. 38 years ago, I was very active in the national Jewish community, and I was at a meeting, and at that time, there was an announcement that what we thought was then going to be the worst president, Ronald Reagan, was elected. And with his election was coming the sale of the AWACS system to Saudi Arabia, which we thought would be disturbing the policy in the Middle East. So I had a few friends sitting around, and I said, we could do kind of like what the Trojan women did. Like when they withheld their favors, they said everything right, and then they just went on to do their next project. Why don't we start this thing that they're talking about called a PAC? We'll find out what it is. There are 300,000 women who belong to Hadassah. All we need are 10,000 women. We know lots of women from coast to coast, and we'll be $1 million, and we'll solve things. So they all agreed. They don't like me having ideas anymore. So 38 years ago, we registered as a multi-candidate PAC. Since then, we not only have a political action committee, JACPAC, we have a 501c4, Joint Action Committee. We also have the Jack Education Foundation. And we use these three entities to kind of cover every activity. We raise money for candidates. We have women who do the research. We have a presence in over 30 states. We also, through the foundation, produce a voter guide. We also pay for young lawyers to go and do poll watching when elections actually occur. We use the advocacy group to go to Washington. We go to Washington with small groups of women. Some men, some enlightened men come with us. And we usually cover over 100 offices in a day. And we get the appointments, and the members do come to the meetings. So we've been doing this for 38 years. Marcia Balanik, who's in the audience, has been the executive director for 28 years. It's headquartered in Chicago, because this is where I live, so therefore it had to be where I live. And we actually came to this organization almost a year and a half ago, because we wanted to innovate. We wanted to find a way to do something better. We wanted to learn how to use technology so that we could break through being retail. And we've raised millions of dollars over the years. We've knocked on, I can't even tell you how many doors and in how many states, and we'll be doing it again in the fall, because it always refreshes us and reminds us that living in Chicago or New York or LA or Denver is a lot different from living in Dubuque or living in a small town in Missouri. And we've been to all those places. I'll be back in Nevada again this time in the fall, because that Senate race is so important. But that's basically what we do.
Okay. And Jesse, I would love for you to speak a little bit more about what CrowdPAC does and how it handles. You've got a very different donor community and a very different sort of relationship between the candidates that you're working with and the donors that you're working with. So.
Yeah, sure. So, hey. So yeah, CrowdPAC, we're not a PAC. Our branding is unfortunate because people get confused. We are a company, we're a vendor. There's only one capital or all capitals in our name. So we're a platform, we're a service for folks. We've really focused on emerging and new leaders who are getting started. Obviously, there's a huge spike of new folks trying to make an impact and a difference after the last presidential election. And we've really focused our effort on helping those people remove friction from entry, especially political candidates thinking about running, largely at the local or state level, although we've had some amazing congressional successes like Lauren Underwood. We basically hacked the exploratory process for a lot of folks. So people can collect credit card-backed pledges of support while they're thinking about running for office that only get charged when they tell us that they've declared and make it and are officially running. So they're able to test the waters and see what kind of support they have in their networks. And it's helped a lot of folks kind of who could be great leaders but haven't done it before and might be a little bit scared that they may not have the pull or may not be able to raise the money, realize that they can raise their funding fee in a matter of hours. We had a bunch of teachers in Oklahoma, for example, who were walking out and protesting, and then they raised their $800 filing fee in like an hour, and I'm like, I can do this, and now they're running for state senate.
That's great.
So we've really focused on not so much innovating and replacing existing tried and true methods of fundraising and organizing, but more taking as much of the friction and resistance out of it and trying to scale it as much as possible and bring as many people into energy movements, waves, and elections as we can. So yeah, we're a crowdfunding service for candidates, organizers, people looking to raise money to put up a billboard, people looking to put an ad up on the air, people looking to fill their campaign coffers. We're there, and we're trying to sort of optimize for that, especially non-establishment, emerging, new folks.
I mean, I think that's interesting because we've got a nice mix of people who are interested in removing barriers for donors to become involved in the process, and people who are interested in removing barriers for candidates, right? I mean, so it's all, I think, about us finding new ways to engage new people and remove barriers that they might have to entry. So I find that fascinating. What other innovations have you seen over the last year since 2016 that you think are interesting or that you want to talk about more? Sure.
So one of the things that I've been seeing a lot of is I'm an organizer. I haven't been doing as long as some other amazing folks on the panel, but when I hear the young folks talk this morning, I very much remind myself that I'm a senior millennial. I'm on the older side. But I knocked a lot of doors, made thousands of phone calls, starting for Howard Dean and then President Obama a couple times. And what I've noticed a lot in a decade plus of organizing is, lists are everything to a campaign, an organizer, a fundraiser. Lists are everything, but there's a lot, and we may touch on this in a bit. There's a reliance now still on these old tried and true methods of lists and direct mail type tactics, then used on email. And what I've seen this year, and we're trying to optimize for, is a transition from lists to networks. So not just here's the list, here's the most efficient way to ask people at the right time, the right ask for the people on the list, one-way broadcast out, but more, how do you turn more of these people who are supporters into askers? How do you put these nodes on the network and activate them so they can drive content through the network, they can independently try to raise through the network, they can talk to each other. One of the biggest innovations I think we had in the political fundraising space was just putting recent activity and comments and faces and pictures on the fundraising pages themselves, which helped really power social media moments. So we had, Jason Chaffetz resigned after a candidate on us raised $500,000 to challenge him in Utah because he made an iPhone gaffe about poor people not buying iPhones if they can't afford healthcare. Gets on Rachel Maddow. A challenger has a pledge campaign set up. $500,000 raised, and it reinforced when people could see the messages, see the support, see the activity, and reach a tipping point where it just grows and grows and grows. We're not the only place that happens, but I think we're one of the more places that are more optimized to take advantage of that momentum. And so I think that transition away from just relying on a list and an email list and efficiently hitting it to building and nurturing and cultivating a network of people that will donate to you but also activate for you with whatever your ask may be is where I think we may be heading naturally, especially as the younger generations do more and more organizing.
When we first started, it was sexy. I mean, women were very excited to be in the decision-making process. They weren't the ones writing the name tags at the meetings. They weren't the ones serving the coffee. They actually were choosing which candidates, where the money would go, and then they got to physically deliver it and sit next to a senator or a congressman. Well, with the cost of campaigns today, especially living in Chicago or in some of the main communities, these people are coming through every week. I mean, it's hard to get someone to even come to something for them half the time, at least with our group, our donor base. But what we have seen is the issues have changed. When we first started, we were formulated about being supportive of a U.S.-Israel relationship, separation of church and religion and state, and then we added women's reproductive rights in the 80s, and now all of a sudden, gun violence prevention. We're doing an event on June 11th. Before we even had the invitation printed, we were sold out because that's how crucial that issue, that has taken our membership and made them interested again, made them galvanized again. So issues can sometimes move a whole block of people. But technology, in our age group, because we're mostly in our upper 40s and up, And we're trying to get the younger ones, and they have a totally different set of issues. They want to look at education and healthcare and crime. But in our age group, using the technology that you all talk about here, they don't implement it that well. It doesn't resonate with them, and we find that it's still the personal touch. It's the phone call. It's a friend calling them and asking them to come. Sometimes if it's a sexy meeting where someone has an unusually good speaker that they've seen on television, or it's a celebrity, and they're kind of hard to book because they can cancel on you if they get a taping. So, you know, you use any method you can to get them there. The thing that I've seen in 38 years that still sickens me, the amount of money for good candidates to get their message out. You know, it used to be a House race was $500,000 to maybe $1.5 million if it was really competitive. And the most expensive Senate race in the country was 20-some million in California. That's nothing. That's nothing today.
Sure.
Nothing today.
No, there have been a lot of changes there, but I think it's interesting that there's a through line between a lot of your comments about building relationships, whether that's a relationship building platform online or making it easier for people to create sort of a community amongst themselves, or building different relationships between individual donors and campaigns, or actually between the donors and one another. I mean, having a community like yours.
And I think for us, we're the newest kids on the block here, but I think for us, one of the changes we've noticed is that people women who are giving, want to have a say directly how their money is being used. They want to know who it's going to and why. You know, they don't want to, not hating on the DCCC, the DNC, or the DSCC, or Emily's List, or anybody else, but there seems to be a real movement towards women wanting to have a say and giving their money directly to that candidate and be able to look that candidate in the eyeball and feel really good about it.
So what kinds of things do you think we'll be looking forward now? What kinds of things do you think that we're going to be talking about next year at this conference? Other kinds of innovations, whether it's in messaging or content or relationships or social media. Do you have any, could you read the tea leaves? Because I know we have literally like a minute left. I can see there's a big flashing minute left for me here.
I could quickly say, I mean, just to echo on what you just said, I mean, I think you've seen already at the DNC and other places, as well as groups like Swing Left and others, really like get you to invest in the substance of what they're trying to do and the strategy of what they're trying to do. And I think that's starting, I'm seeing that resonate a ton. So I think we may be talking about how things may have shifted away from the everything's falling, we're going to lose, everybody's going to die model. And so I think that's pretty healthy.
Yeah.
My hope is next year when we all come together after November's election, that we're very pumped because we successfully turned the House and maybe made it a smaller margin in the Senate, and we're coalescing for a future White House takeover.
And one of my hopes would be that we're really able to coalesce and organize and deploy all these organizations and others who aren't here to do the things that they do best. I mean, one of the things that drives me kind of nuts about philanthropy in general and political giving as well is how much redundancy there is and how much administrative overhead. And it just seems like there should be a better way of doing that. And the other thing that I've wanted to do for years is if we could get the tech people, the tech titans, 3 or 4 of them, to group together, they would blow the Koch brothers and their money away.
Yes.